Sasha Wallace. It is Sasha Wallace swimming towards the finish line.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. LaKendra Redd-Smith, Health Sector Director for Project Transition under the leadership of Dr. Joaquin Wallace. Welcome back to our interview series where we interview high-performing athletes and we have conversations about their athletic journeys and their transitions into their careers. Here today we have with us NCAA champion, two-time Pac-12 champion of many other things, Sasha Wallace. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
If you don't mind, would you introduce yourself to the guests and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So my name is Sasha. I went to the University of Oregon where I received my NCAA title in the 60-meter hurdles. I am also a Pac-12 champion in the 100-meter hurdles, 9-time All-American, and I am from the Bay Area. I believe I probably have about 6 state titles, and now I am post-professional track athlete, and I am starting a career in medicine in hopes of becoming a physician.
Good deal. That sounds like a lot. So how about we start from the beginning? Do you mind telling us about your formative years in track and how you got to Oregon?
So, like I said, I was born in the Bay Area. I ran track with a youth team, Coach Pittman in Oakland. It's called 3M. When we were trained under him, it wasn't really a specialty event. We kind of all did all the events, which I think is super useful when you're young. So you can kind of be exposed to different events. I hurdled, I jumped. I think I threw a little, but I was definitely on a lot of relays. But I think I excelled the most in the 400, which people don't really even realize because I hurdled. What I got my scholarship in college was hurdling and jumping. So I was a quarter miler. I think it was a lot more natural to me. My older sister did the 400, so it was kind of like something I want to say I fell into. And then from there, I went to high school at Holy Names, and it was an all-girls school. There was no girls on the track team. I remember it was me and my friend Courtney, team of 2 people. And then we got to our sophomore, junior year of high school, and we got a friend group. And we had a team of probably 6, and it was so exciting for us because we had a relay and we were able to do the 4x1 and the 4x4. And I was able to go to state in the hurdles, and I jumped where I got my state titles, and then transferred to Castro Valley. Most of my senior year was involved with doing visits at colleges. And then it led me to choosing Oregon ultimately. I wanted to stay in the Pac-12. That was like the big deciding factor. And I wanted the head coach to coach my event. The head coach was a jumps coach. That's kind of what I wanted. And I wanted the head coach to be someone of color. So that was really kind of what went into my decision making and choosing Oregon. Loved it. You know, I have so many memories from that program. We won a lot of titles. It was a good experience overall. It was a very chill environment, and I'm happy that I chose it.
That's awesome. We interviewed Miss White, Olympic medalist, right? And in her story, she talks about joining the track team and not having a track. From my understanding, you were kind of in a similar situation. How are you competitive in a space where you don't have all the resources? So if you don't mind, could you elaborate on that situation and overcoming that obstacle?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. My early on exposure to track with 3M, like in my young youth, it was very structured. The coach, literally at the time, he was the captain of a police department, just super kind of like militant, but to the point, he just really instilled what it took to be competitive, like what a week's worth of training looked like, what commitment looked like, and he held us accountable. And so I think going into high school, I kind of already knew the steps that I needed to take in order for me to get to be like this competitive athlete. Now, I was young, obviously, 15, 16. I don't know what it takes to build a team. I don't know, we didn't even have a coach at the time. I think me just sharing my goals with my parents and letting them know, hey, this is what I want to do. I have a couple friends, we really want to go to this track meet in LA. We really want to be a part of this track meet or this invitational rather, they kind of were able to push that forward. I always look back and it's just like, me and my friend, we were just like kind of marketing, like be on this team with us, it would be really fun. I don't know what got us into that. I think it was just our drive for the sport. It was such a small community, it being an all-girls school. We were just very comfortable to do that, I think. And I had a club coach in the summer and he was open to being the head coach, which was super cool. And then it was funny because we literally had to drive 20 minutes from the high school to the track. So that first 2 years, it just I was competitive on the track, but just helping build a team that literally was non-existent to like something. It just was like, okay, I think I know what it takes to be competitive off the track. I was really young, but I kind of think about that as I'm older. Like, okay, I kind of built a team. I can really do anything I want to do.
What skills do you think you developed in that moment that were very pertinent to your success in the workplace now?
Yeah, I think in that moment, I hate to even say this word, like more of like a visionary. I was thinking about what could be, right? And so working towards that. I don't want to say I was living more in the future than in the present. I think that's really what kind of the skill set I had. And I was just kind of like honing into that, like, hey, it could be this. And I think I was always referencing what my youth team looked like, right? Because we would go to Junior Olympics, we would travel, and I just kind of knew what it took to win. Now, I knew at the high school, like the girls weren't really as involved. Like they didn't like track as much as like I may have liked track, but they were just more so into like the team. And that's when I just realized like it doesn't really matter the skill set people have. It's just like the commitment to just seeing something build. And, that was something that I think I kind of instill now, like that support of having the people around you can help you get to that end goal. And as long as you have that commitment, that's really all that matters.
So do you think it's fair to say that in the moment it's okay not to necessarily recognize those skills, but you can absolutely identify them in hindsight?
I think so, because in the moment, people just really want to be a part of something and they just want to be involved in a cause. And I think also you can develop skills, right? Like a lot of times you start out with something that you don't even know, like what looks like or exists. And when you're involved in that process with people, you develop skills, you learn skills, and you can walk away and you're like, oh, wow, I learned this from that. And so, yeah, I think like in the moment, you can have it or not have it, but it's just what you're willing to allow people to help develop in you.
Awesome. So let's take us to your recruitment, and you're in Oregon. In the time frame of names, image, and likeness, NIL, what advice do you have for any current athlete that's on a recruiting trail?
So I can just really compare it to my journey. I don't know. I think I just was very unique, right? In the sense that my dad was like a college coach, a college women's coach. So I think I always kind of knew like what I wanted in a coach. And I was very specific in like what I wanted to receive from the program, what environment I wanted. So I think going into any recruiting process, have an idea, like a sense of what you are trying to get from the program. Because if you go on these recruiting visits and you don't have that, they're going to tell you what is important to you. They're going to tell you how they utilize you. And I think it's really easy for kids to kind of just get off track with that, because at the end of the day, they need you. And going into mine, my recruiting visits, I just always was very like focused in that. Like, okay, I'm not talking to any coaches or programs that does not have a person of color. That was just like, it doesn't matter how good the program is. Like, I just needed to make sure I identify with someone that way. And there was a lot of programs that didn't have that. They could come out and talk and, meet us, but I was never going to even step foot on that campus because that was a value that was important to me. And so having just kind of like a plan in place, and you're so young and kids don't even realize like how much thought you have to put into that. But I really do think that helps people just navigate the process, because it can be overwhelming. Just try to have some joy in it, because a lot of times it may not happen for you like that again as you get older. So just try to enjoy the process.
That's excellent insight and awesome advice. Question. So let's talk about your time at Oregon. Clearly you were extremely successful. You were 9-time conference champ, right? In something. I had no idea you jumped. I can't lie.
Triple jump is my dog. Teach it.
It's interesting that it seems like you enjoy jumping more than you enjoy the hurdles, but everybody knows you for hurdles. So how do you curtail your passions for things you like versus things you're actually more successful at?
I would say I was definitely more into triple jump. I kind of like enjoyed it. I had more fun with it. It came more natural. I didn't really focus on a lot of jumping until I was in high school. And once I did that, I just enjoyed it so much. I don't know why, but I think it just was like the natural thing. With hurdles, going to college, I realized how much of a business it was. The head coach, was a triple jump coach. And my coach from high school also was getting recruited at the same time as me, but he ended up being on the coaching staff at Oregon. And I had a lot of success in hurdles. And so I think being a part of a program that just really put winning national championships on the forefront, the head coach said, hey, I have no problem with you doing whatever event you want to do. But at the end of the day, you have to do an event that scores and that gets you into the finals. And it was hard to hear as an 18, 19-year-old girl because I want to have fun, that's not really what I was being recruited for. But it definitely took a turn my junior year. And I just had to realize it was nothing personal because at the end of the day, track is an individual sport. But that's when I realized how much I really was invested in my team. And I just really enjoy winning things with them. And so if I needed to hurdle to do that, I had to do that. There was a lot of people across the team that did events that they did not want to do. And I thought it was me, but it was everyone. So I think we all just kind of did what we had to do to win. And if that meant, hurdling 3 times at a track meet, that was my way of contributing. And looking back, I do not regret it at all. I went there for titles, to get titles, and I got that. So
cool beans. Project Transition has launched this mentorship program, Project Success. And one of the things that we identified specifically with some of the individuals we have in states that really push education degrees, things like that to get those high paying jobs or whatnot. One of the things that we noticed was an obstacle for them was that their non-negotiables were really getting in the way, right? And so my question is, how much of an impact on your success do you believe would have occurred if you stood firm and not jumping hurdles was a non-negotiable for you? If you did not turn that non-negotiable into a negotiable, how successful do you believe you would have been?
What a big question. I think that I didn't realize when I was in college how talented I was, right? You're around just talented, it seems like super gods. And so you just don't think you're at that level. But I think me being there was enough to know that I was talented. And I think that if I weren't doing hurdles, if I did another event, I think I still would have been successful, especially with the triple jump. I think that I probably would have been a lot more happier because that's what I wanted to do. I just really enjoy jumping. I don't know why. I think maybe it's because it's so technical and I'm really into science and stuff and you have to break it down. And I do think that had I not done hurdles, I did the triple jump, I think my career probably would have been a lot longer. I will say that. I would have just kept wanting to achieve this goal and I just would have enjoyed it so much that the losses, not saying the hurdles wouldn't have mattered, but I think it's different when you have a genuine love for something. You can do it through anything, and you want to do it through anything. Just the confidence I have in myself, just me being an athlete, I feel like I would be successful, right? I don't.
Oh, that's fair. That's totally fair. I totally get it. But that also places, your answer places the emphasis on sacrifice and sacrifice for team goals, right? How important that is. Take us to the time when you actually won the NCAA championship.
I was a senior in college, and I will have to say I was the most calm I've ever been, which was weird at the time, but it wasn't, because I remember when I was in high school, my dad will always be so surprised at how calm I was before I ran my finals. I would sleep cool as a cucumber. I think it was just because of the journey that it took me to get there. My freshman year, I fell at the national championships, planted on my face. I was the only freshman in the final. And then sophomore year, that was like a whole mental block I had to get through. I was able to still make it to the NCAAs and in the finals, but I just wasn't there mentally. I think from that previous year of just falling. And then junior year, I was able to kind of get back into my groove. Didn't win. I was runner up. And then by the time I got to my senior year, it was just like, I have nothing to lose. Like, just have fun. I had been winning each race prior to that. So I think that helped with my confidence. Is just like, okay, just do what you've been doing, right? Like, don't do anything crazy. Our coach used to always say, don't be superwoman. Don't do anything outside of what brought you here. And so I think that really helped me just kind of stay calm. Like, you know how it feels to run these fast times. Your routine up to the day, getting sleep, like being structured, doing all those things, and your pre-meet, all that. And so I was very calm and I was just really excited to be there. Like I said, it was my senior year. I wasn't going to be at another indoor NCAA for that matter. All my family was there. It was in Texas. It was just a really nice environment for me. And then when I ran the race, it was weird because I ran it, won, and I just was like, okay. And you have all these mics in your face and you're just like, it's done. Like, wow, that's how that feels. It didn't even really hit me until I got on the flight back to Oregon. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just won, right? So yeah, when you work so hard for something, it's just kind of like when you can achieve it. And then when you achieve it, it's like, I hate to say it's not really a surprise. You're just kind of like, okay, all right, it's how it feels. It was meant to be,
Understood. After you won that race, one of those people that was holding that microphone asked a question. I don't remember the question, but in your response, you talked about your dad instilling in you this concept of increment growth.
Oh, yes.
Do you mind expounding on that concept for us? What is increment growth and why does it matter?
Well, how he always used to phrase it is, Sasha, if you were to win your freshman year, how would that benefit you? Like, if you were to get it all the titles your freshman year, just imagine the pressure. It would be sophomore, junior, and senior, right? That's a lot of pressure, especially on someone who's young. So I would much rather, or you would much rather have incremental growth working towards that title or championship, because during that incremental growth, you're learning more about the journey and you're learning really kind of just more about yourself. I didn't know what he meant then, because when he was telling me this, I was a freshman and I had face planted on my face in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I wasn't really trying to hear none of that. But as I got to my senior year and look back, I'm like, okay, and I think my junior year, I had got runner up. So I went from face planting, I don't know why I'm saying that, but I failed freshman year to getting, I think, my sophomore year, and then second, my junior year, and then going into my senior year, I was like, okay, I have to win. Like, what else is next? Working towards that. That's kind of my takeaway from what he would say, incremental growth. He just always kind of instilled that in all of us. And so looking back, I can see it. And it doesn't frustrate me anymore when I don't really get what I want in that moment, because it's a journey and it's a process.
Awesome. So you mentioned the growth. My question now is during that process, because you still remember that you face planted. That's a fresh memory. It's probably a fresh memory. Like, you probably relive it every time you say it. What kind of mental health exposures, whether positive or negative, impacted your success? Because I would imagine that's kind of tough to overcome that, especially being young and not necessarily having the tools or being unaware of tools. Or you attended Oregon. Oregon has a lot of resources.
When people think of like trauma or whatever, right? They think of something physically or something that's like painful happening to you. But trauma, I learned that can happen on like many levels. And so I think when I fell, that was in and of itself a traumatic experience, right? Like you said, I was really young and I'm on TV in front of hundreds of thousands of people. I didn't think anything of it. Even the way it happened, I just walked off. Looking back, I could have just walked through the line and I could have got a point in another All-American title. But I think the biggest part is like, I didn't know what trauma looked like, and I didn't know how mental health or therapy could aid me in that sense. And I think there's just like a really bad stigma just with like therapy and just like mental health. And I think with athletes especially, we're just taught to just perform without like having any feeling tied to like the performance. But when you train for something for 6 months and it's just like one race, there's so much that happens in 6 months, like traumatic with your body. Like, you know, you may not have finished a rep. That does something to your mind. Like, it's a lot that goes through your head. And I think with track, we just train for so long until we see a race. And so, like I said, my freshman to sophomore year, that was just a mental block that I just didn't even know what I was going through. And one of my friends at the time, she was seeing a therapist, and it was cool because it wasn't the therapist that is on our track team. It was a therapist it was called the SAC committee. So it was nice to have like to talk to someone who didn't have any ties to any sports. I don't even think she was really a sports fan. She was just listening to us, and she kind of assisted all the athletes, not just with track. So it was just a really unbiased like approach. And I just talked to her, and I remember always just talking to her about like what my goals were like after track and what I'm going through now at like 19, 20. Like I just wasn't able to make sense out of it, you know, and just like being a part of this program, like you take things personal. So she was able to like get me to view things in a different way. It's just nothing's personal. I think that's just the biggest thing that I just took away from her. It just really helped me get through like to my junior year and my senior and just keep improving. But I think it was just kind of like, okay, recognizing like, hey, you know, it's okay to talk to somebody, you know, especially someone like me who did an individual sport. Mental health is really important, and therapy is very important.
During that moment, I know you received some assistance and some guidance from a friend, but what resources do you believe you needed prior to that individual that would have aided you in your mental health journey during that time frame?
If she didn't tell me the resources, I think that it would have been nice to hear it from like the coaching staff, what's available, and then just it being more advertised, like especially in the athletic department. You know, when I went to her office, it was actually the athletes would get their tutoring and all their resources. It's called the JQuil. It's a really big building where they go to. And her office was in the building, and I didn't even know like that wing of the building existed. It was crazy. But it just goes to show like it wasn't advertised. It wasn't talked about. And I actually attended SAC meetings more regularly. They were once a week. And then they kind of told us about the resources that was available on campus. Like I said, my teammate, I just wouldn't have known what was available to us. The track team provided their own therapists and trainers and everything, but you know, like they have a goal of just getting you on the track. So I don't think like that's the best road to go down sometimes. Like if you just want to like get an unbiased approach or opinion with something that athletes going through. So it was good to just talk to someone in the SAC department.
So what was the biggest lesson that track has taught you?
Oh, okay. It taught me a lot of things. I would say like the biggest thing that it's taught me is that what will be, especially with like this, me being in this medical journey. STEM is very competitive. You know, a lot of people are trying to interview for the same thing or interview to get in the same school or what have you, or interview to be in the same specialty. But if it's for you, like you don't have to fight for it. It will find you, and you just have to have faith in that. You know, a lot of times people force things to happen, and it's just like, okay, but maybe that wasn't for you. Maybe you should look at it from a different lens, from a different approach, maybe tackle it a little differently. And I think that also kind of helps like with confidence, right? It's just like, okay, knowing that something's for me, it's just like, I'm confident that that's gonna be mine and I'm gonna have it. And delay is not denial. I think that's the biggest thing. The time frame, right? People want it when they want it. I think that goes back to incremental growth and just being patient. So it's taught me a lot, but that's my biggest takeaway with track, and I'm grateful for it.
From my understanding, you sustained at some point a very significant injury that required surgical correction. I know suffering an injury as an athlete is very tough. How did that play a part into your track career as far as transitioning from track to just anything else in life, whether it was maintaining a career as a professional track athlete or attempting, you know, a career as a professional track athlete, or even just from the standpoint of this injury has forced me to push pause on some some things and now I have to think?
Yeah, so the injury happened post-collegiate. I was a professional in LA. I was running with a pro group, gold medalist, bronze medalist, all just everything. And it was just such a great experience. But you're pushing yourself every day. I think that's just the biggest thing. And just being around them, my confidence was just like, wow, I'm like training with these people. I'm meant to be here. But I wasn't really conscious of like how I was feeling as much as I should have been, right? I knew what that looked like. I knew at Oregon, like what it looked like to be health conscious in your body, right? So getting massages once a week, having a chiropractor, like contrast baths. So I knew what it looked like and I knew I wasn't having that as frequently. And it just was because of accessibility, right? Oregon is just one of those places that just has it all there. In the middle of LA, it's hard to get to have that. So I think in LA, I realized how much I needed to adopt my own team, my own chiropractor, my own trainer, like my own people that can help me get to being successful. But it takes a while in getting there. And it wasn't like I came out having this huge contract or anything. I didn't have like work from a lot of shoe companies. So a lot of the stuff I had to kind of fish out and just do on my own. It was my second year. My first year was like anybody's rookie year. It was painful, it was hard. But I learned a lot. And I came back my second year just ready. I ran all summer on my own. I got super fit. I was like, this is going to be my year, running really fast. But it was like, okay, it was coming too fast to the point where my body couldn't keep up with it. But I kept pushing through. And so that's when I actually got a tear in my post-tibialis tendon. It's a big mouthful, but basically it's the tendon that holds the arch up in your foot. So as a hurdler, you run a lot on your toes. So just imagine running just flat. You're just not able to power through anything. And it's a very, very rare injury in people of my age. You see it a lot in like older individuals, 70, 80-year-old people. So a lot of the doctors weren't willing to operate on me because I was 22, 23, and they just felt like that type of operation would kind of be career ending. I literally met with 6, 7 doctors. They all said no. And finally I came and I met one doctor. I remember my mother went with me. She was the podiatrist for the U.S. women's soccer team. And she sees a lot of injuries like such as mine. And she said, hey, she gave it to me real. And she said, hey, you can get the surgery and it may or may not work for you. Or you can just continue as is and you're going to be in pain. And I knew from that moment, I needed to start a new chapter in my career because I was the only woman, female doctor that was honest with me. And I had injuries when I was in college, but obviously I had the support of a whole university. So I was able to see through my injuries with the help of doctors and everything. So I was really impacted from doctors really early on. But I think when I got this injury with a woman, I said, okay, if I get through this surgery, I need to start on my medical career. Because for one, it isn't a lot of women in podiatry or just medicine, like in surgery. And I think the male doctors that talked to me, they didn't want to be honest with me because they didn't think I'd be able to take it. And so I ended up getting the surgery and it was successful. And then, I tried to go back into track again, but something didn't feel right with me with that. So I just was like, I think I'm just going to start my medical journey. And it was something I was passionate about. And I hadn't really had that much passion since like I triple jumped. So I was like, I like hurdles, but I think I might like this more. So I think it's time to close that chapter.
Would you like to elaborate on your journey as a pre-med student and your attempts to get into med school?
Yeah, so I'm like in it now. So this is real time. Now, like I'm applying to medical school and obviously like I'm doing the application process and writing down like the journeys, what I face and why I want to be a doctor. And so much of it reflects on like my track, like in bringing me here. But I think just like going through pre-med, it just was really interesting because you learn obviously about the body, but it's just so similar to being a part of a team than I thought, because you have literally doctors collaborating with each other for one patient. And I was the patient, right, in college. And being like a track athlete is so individual. The only thing you really have is like your team titles in college. But past that, like, it's all individual. And I didn't realize how much I loved being a part of the team, like having a team. And just in high school, building a team, it was like, wow, I like this, right? And then just seeing how it goes from start to finish. You're like, okay, I like it. Dang, it has to be track. Like, I got to do my individual event, but like, let's do a relay. But in college, the team of just winning, it's like, wow, okay, me winning a title is great, but like winning a title with everybody is just like, it's just so much more fulfilling. And so doing the pre-med thing, I knew it had team qualities, but I didn't realize how much it had that. Like that camaraderie, right? Starting something from the beginning and then seeing it through. And so that's where I'm like, okay, I know this is a career that I want to be in. I'm excited about it. You know, I got to get there, and there might be its own like nuances, but that's just what's making me eager to just like press on. It's such a long journey, but I don't know, it's not as daunting as people like explain to me. It's just exciting. So
Sounds like you like challenges.
yeah, I think you're right.
So what's the biggest obstacle that you face thus far in your journey to med school?
I will say that STEM is not a lot of people of color and women either, for that matter. So it's like a double whammy. And I think me just being in my pre-med program, I've tried to get help from teachers, advisors for like scholarships or grants, and just having people write, you know, letters of rec for me. And them being women, but them not being Black women. Like, why are you trying? Why? We need you, but what? Me having to explain myself, right? And I don't mind doing that, but you're not asking the male next to me to explain themselves, because it's almost like the reason they're here is like, there's no explanation. Men need to be in this. We know why they're here. But for a woman, a Black woman, it's explain yourself. Why do you deserve to be? Why are you in this room? Even if I get the same grades, why are you scoring high? It's just so much questioning. And it's like, okay, and maybe that's just me liking a challenge. Like, okay, once I get in here, I'm going to go back to my hometown and try to, I guess, recruit more people that look like me to be in these spaces so they're not questioned. Because I think that's what makes people, all that resistance, right? You know, okay, you're right, maybe I shouldn't be here, like that questioning. But it just doesn't work for me, I guess, maybe because I'm just so competitive already. I know I should be in the room. I'm good enough as anyone to be in the room. And it's related to track. I'm in a lane. I deserve to be in the lane just like everybody else. So take the same mindset, period.
Right. So throughout the interview, you've mentioned your family support, and you mentioned your dad, you mentioned friends, you mentioned the resources and support that you had at Oregon. You also mentioned in LA the lack of support, right? And so initially when we started this concept of interviewing athletes to try to delve into what were the problems that they faced in their transition, everyone mentioned support. Whether it was I wasn't successful because I lacked support, or my career could have lasted longer if I had X, Y, and Z as support or as resources, or I'm literally successful because I had the right type of support every step of the way.
Yeah.
And so that brought about for us this notion that mentorship matters. How important was mentorship and proper support and guidance a factor in your career?
Well, when I think about mentorship when I was younger, I thought it was somebody, you know, who kind of looked like me, right? Not too much older than me. Like, I think we have like a look of what mentorship looks like. But a lot of my mentors did not, like, they were men, like my coaches. A lot of them were people who were my peers, right? They weren't anyone like a lot older, like what you think it would be. And I think as long as somebody's supporting you and understands like what your long-term goal is, that's a mentor, and they're helping you get there. I knew what mentorship looked when I was younger. I was in a lot of programs and environments. You know, what do you want to do when you grow up? Thinking about those things early on. And then the people just providing space for that. I think with mentorship for me, it just allowed me to do things and be comfortable and confident in doing things that you may have never seen. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's important to not be in a box, allowing people to just, okay, yeah, I've never seen that either, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. To mentor, right? Going back to the high school thing, I never built a team, but like the people at my school was like, why not, right? Let's do it. And so from that point on, I just kind of had that same mentality. Like, it's important to just kind of pay it forward. And it's helped me with my mentors, people mentoring me, and I like to do it for others. It's just so much good that can come out of that.
Again, we talked about your family. Just for perspective, just to shape the lens, we're raised in a 2-parent household, multiple income household, correct? And so there are some people who don't have your experience, right? It sounds like your family dynamics, you had a lot of support. Your family was extremely supportive. Whatever you needed, it sounded like you got. And so a lot of people would say that you don't have a lot of the challenges that other Black athletes have, right? And so sometimes we get in those notions that we think people don't struggle because their circumstances are perceived to be better than others. So my question to you is, coming from that type of family dynamic, what are obstacles that you believe you faced or anyone faces that the average person who doesn't come from similar background doesn't quite get, that those are challenges that you have to face?
So I would say growing up, like just having a 2-parent household, the support was there. Like, I can't deny that, very tight-knit family. People who looked into that, I think they kind of had a thought that things would be easier for me to obtain goals. So, I may have had people who were on my team who came from single-parent households. And so, if I won races, they thought it was easier just because I had 2 parents. And it's just kind of like negated the fact that I worked hard for that, because at practice, we still trained together. And, my talent was there, but it just all kind of, people just didn't think that I had to work hard. But at the end of the day, I have my 2 parents, I have my family, but I still have to do the work, right? The work still has to get done. At the end of the day, my daddy ain't, running me in the line on the track. Like, he's not pulling me. The most they can do is probably get me a new pair of shoes, but I still have to run. I still have to be structured. I still have to get up at 6 a.m. Those things still happen. And I'm not saying that someone who doesn't come from the 2-parent household doesn't work hard. I know they work hard just as much as I work hard. We all work hard. But it's just kind of, that was the thought process. Like, things just came easier just because And when I went to college, nobody's parents were there. So it kind of just leveled the playing field. And, if people still wanted to hate about that, they could, but we still had the same resources. We had the same trainers. We had the same whirlpool sessions. Like, when I was younger, I took that personal. But as I got older, it was just kind of like, okay, maybe that just might be a reflection of that person. And maybe that just because they didn't get what they wanted to do, they have to blame it on something. But I can't think about that, right? Like, I can't lose sight or think about what they're thinking. Just kind of focus on what I'm doing, because you still have a race to run. It's still a test to take.
You still have a race to run, and you still have to run it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Ms. Sasha, do you have any nuggets that you would like to leave for our audience?
Well, I think my biggest one is just patience, right? Trust the process. I always just go by delays, not denial. At the end of the day, like, what's for you will find you. You don't have to fight for anything. Still work hard, but, the things that were made for me, it kind of just fell right in my lap. Like, it was nothing that I had to fight for. It was meant for me to have. So if people can just trust the process in that and just be confident in yourself, have conversations with yourself. What do you want? What's your motivation? And I think things will be smooth for you.
Thank you for that great advice. And thank you for taking time out of your schedule to interview with us today. I am Dr. Lakendra Red Smith. She is Sasha Wallace. We are Project Transition. Be sure to check us out on our socials. Also check us out on our website at ptransition.org and follow Sasha on her socials as well. Again, thank you all for listening.
Thank you.